Yeah, let's do the de Blasio one. So I was a little concerned the other day to see that these, shall we say, fascist looking tactics have come to New York City. I'm talking, of course, about the practice of kidnapping, basically abducting protesters in unmarked vans, driving them around for a little bit, and then letting them out later to freak them out mostly. And, you know, it feels like a fascist flourish. Like, if not, it's not actual fascism yet, but it feels like they're like trying to make it. They're scaring us, basically. So anyway, I saw this video of the cops abducting a young activist, young unhoused trans woman activist in New York City during an action in solidarity with the City Hall occupation. Because, as you may know, we've had an Occupy-style occupation encampment outside of City Hall for like a month now, and I feel like it hasn't received enough coverage. But the police recently decided that they had had enough, and they cleared out the park. And so anyway, this was an action in solidarity with that. This woman was pulled into a van and driven away in a really disturbing fashion. Do we have that video?
Yes, we do.
We better, Brendan.
Oh my gosh, I'm already getting threats.
Note the lack of fireworks and rocks thrown at the car, as the cops would claim there were.
Right.
Which, frankly, people have been pulled into an unmarked vehicle. I think that vehicle, should probably have seen better days.
There's the bike cops.
Lassie, quit your jobs. Oh my God.
So that happened a few days ago. And since then, Mayor Mike de Blasio has...
Bill de Blasio.
But did I say, what did I say?
You're confusing Mike Bloomberg with Bill de Blasio.
Oh my God.
Bill de Bloomberg.
To be fair, at this point, it's
whose
pretty
fault
close.
Is that?
Right.
Huh?
The only difference is their net worth at this point, really.
I also did not get enough sleep last night, so that might be part of it. But no, de Blasio himself got on the TV and he felt the need to comment on how what happened was a terrible thing, a police overreach, a chilling of civil liberties. Just kidding. Here's what he said.
This is not Portland, and I want to emphasize what you see on that video is NYPD officers. There are no federal agents involved, nor would we be involved with federal agents in anything like that. So I think it was the wrong time and the wrong place to effectuate that arrest.
Good.
The arrest, as I understand it so far, was for damaging police property. I want to affirm very clearly, no one is allowed to damage police property.
All right, let's take that though, because there's a lot to unpack here, but I really want to just focus on what he just said at the end there. Damaging police property. What the NYPD has said in their own official Twitter accounts is that this woman who they arrested was caught apparently putting stickers or decals on NYPD cameras or property or whatever. Okay, let's not get caught up in what kind of destruction.
Allegedly.
Right.
Allegedly.
Let's also not get caught up in what is or isn't destruction. Let's just take it for what it is. Okay. I've never seen anyone get kidnapped like that for charges related to property destruction. I mean, and that magnitude, who would get pulled, like the police pulled over in an unmarked vehicle, undercover officers came out and threw this person in their car for, again, property damage. This is like something you would do to, like, I don't know, if you caught like a world famous, FBI top 10 like terrorist or something like that. Not someone who did some low level property destruction on city property. That's just ridiculous.
Well, I really want to emphasize it's not just property damage that the crime she's been accused of, right? It's a political act. It's civil disobedience.
Right.
And arguably an act of fighting for justice to disable, usually with paint or stickers, not by smashing, but like, again, who cares? These tools, these instruments that the surveillance state uses to spy on protesters attempting to make political change.
Right.
Well, and we only have the cops' word for it that she did any of this stuff, and even if she did, you don't just roll up on an intersection and pull her unasked into an unmarked van, right? Like, just a ridiculous way to do these arrests. And it is, I mean, it's like what Jamie said earlier. This is, I think, for some of the performance of it. This is they don't mind necessarily. It's pretty amazing that they don't mind that the video goes out of this, and they don't mind to contradict it just blatantly by lying about what's actually visible, which is that there weren't people. It wasn't like a complete out of control situation that with people throwing rocks at the vehicle and stuff like that. Everyone was scared because these goons rolled up really fast and pulled her into a van.
Right.
Yeah,
you could think this was some
terrifying.
sort. Right. You could think this is someone literally who has who's being kidnapped.
Yeah, it looks like a drama
situation is.
It looks like a dramatization of what security officials were doing for black sites overseas. In the war on terror.
Well,
and let's also address Bill de Blasio's addendum that this is okay because it was the NYPD, not federal law enforcement. Listen, we get the heightened issue in Portland where there's federal law enforcement doing it. The heightened issue is, obviously due to the fact that Trump has sent his own lackeys and goons out there basically to police the streets of Portland without any local input. But that doesn't make the acts with what the federal law enforcement are doing okay if the local law enforcement just do it.
It doesn't make speaking of black sites, it doesn't make the Chicago black sites acceptable. I mean, this stuff basically, speaking of Mike de Blasio, right? Like being the same thing. I mean, this sort of thing was happening. I saw plenty of tweets saying, this happened to me when I was a black grad student in New York, just pulled into a van and interrogated someplace. Not acceptable at all. That's like,
it's not acceptable in a marked van either, by the way. Like, there are several levels of unacceptability happening at once here. And while I think the constitutional issues and jurisdictional overreach involved in sending in the feds to Portland is certainly something to keep an eye on, right? I don't want people to get too distracted from the primary issue here, which is the function the cops serve in society and the way they treat people. And that's going to be true whether you're being abducted by someone in a marked van or an unmarked van, and whether the FASH are local FASH or feds.
Right.
And it's also like the key dynamic here, and there's that reporter from Bellingcat, I forget his name, is I think I Write Okay is his ad.
I know you're talking about, right?
Yeah, he's a really good report on everything this summer in Portland. And the reason Robert Evans, the reason that the protesters are starting to look like, coming with their own tactical gear now is because of escalations by the police. And I don't know, it's a terrifying. I'm worried about what comes this fall, because they just seem to keep rolling this stuff out in different areas, and as the feds is like a model for how the cops should start handling these things.
Right. I mean, the mayors across the country could go out there and say they're against it, and whether they really are, as we see, in New York, where it's fine as long as it's the local PD doing it. Who knows? But regardless, it's pretty clear that local law enforcement supports the federal law enforcement, and they'll be happy to share whatever sort of equipment or necessary analysis or whatever they have on a local level with those feds. I mean, it's pretty clear they're willing to do that. I mean,
there was concern that there would be some kind of standoff between the cops and the feds, and it's like,
we're right. There'll be high fives and
there's enough pie for everyone here.
Yeah.
I like how the cops posted a video of this person allegedly this person allegedly parodying their security cameras as if it's supposed to be some like damning evidence that she deserved to be kidnapped, and not like, oh, this is a cool person doing heroic things.
All right.
I mean, that's the optics of all this stuff is very difficult for them to manage. I don't know, but I don't know.
I mean,
What do you guys
find this with Biden? I think too. It's gonna. Well, I mean, let's table that conversation for later.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
What do you guys make of DeBunglio's answer here? Like, do you think the cops have something specific on him?
I
or
think he's
his
worried
family?
about his kids. I think he's
or is he just a bootlicker more generally for the carceral state that props up capitalism?
I think he's worried about his family. I don't think they have anything on him. There's no re-election for DeBlasio. He's term limited. This is his next year's his last year. There's no reason to hold anything they would have on him. I don't think they would strategize in that way. They would they really don't like the mayor of the NYPD, and they've had no problem showing that even in his first term. And I just think he's honestly worried about his kids. I mean, NYPD is involved in every facet of New York City life. I mean, Bill de Blasio came in as a reformer, and I mean, my thing is, he hasn't done what he said he would do with the NYPD, and whether that's because he didn't want to and lied, or didn't want to I don't know what his plans were coming in, but it's clear that he's not able to. And if he was really someone who wanted to reform them, which is what he said, he could at the very least use his bully pulpit as the mayor of New York City and explain to the people of New York that, listen, here's what I wanted to do. And it's just not, I can't do it because the NYPD is just, it's beyond my reach. I mean, I've had people explain to me that, he could actually do things, but yes, like we're talking about now, technically there's probably things he could do, but things aren't always so technical when, he's probably thinking of things NYPD could do that are out of that scope, if you know what I mean.
Well, it just seems like more evidence to me that this is not an institution that can be reformed. This is not an institution that will accept any check on its power. And the only thing we can do is try to amass enough power as leftists, as normal people, as activists, as voters, whatever, to convince our elected officials to defund, disarm, and, not right now, but maybe someday abolish the police. Like negative shout outs to Corey Johnson, who's been on the cop's side every step of the way.
All right. I mean, he feigned shock at what was going on when he saw that video. But I mean, it's really, again, the only shocking thing was it happened in the context of, I guess, Bill de Blasio promoting that this would never happen in New York City. And then this happens literally days after he said that. But in terms of it being shocking in general, no. I mean, this is who the NYPD is. I mean, I actually recently gave testimony to Attorney General Letitia James because of what I've been seeing at some of these protests. I've seen a cop in Queens flash the OK sign at the protesters more than once. Even though
that's an alt-right symbol, folks.
Right, it's an alt-right. Again, this is a symbol I've covered a lot. It could mean things unintentional if you don't know about it.
Of course, it's a common signal to mean okay, but it's used by basically white supremacists or fascists to troll people, but in a way that's so obvious that it's become an actual symbol, crypto signal that you recognize it. Right.
So how I've explained this thing that I saw is the fact that the first time the protesters got angry at him and it caused this whole issue at the protest site, and maybe he didn't know, but then when he was told to leave the site, and on his way by his superiors and on his way out to his car, he flashes the signal back at them twice. Then it becomes more questionable if he knew what he was doing.
Look, anybody in law enforcement, I'm sorry, they know what that means. They know that trolling game. Let's just say.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I'm inclined to, but I think you might be giving too much credit to law enforcement.
It depends how young, I guess. Anybody under 40 or 45 would definitely know, I think.
There was a lawsuit that I always bring up from the late 90s where a person who wanted to become an NYPD police officer, I believe it was NYPD, but don't quote me on NYPD, but a police officer in this country scored too well on the test, and they didn't hire him for that reason. And it came out through this lawsuit that part of the test wasn't for them to see how intelligent you are, but it's also to make sure that you would follow orders without questioning it. So if you scored too well in certain facets of this test, they didn't want you to become a police officer. So basically, this guy gave answers that made it clear to them that, oh, wow, he would actually think about what he was doing, what he was told to do, and not just do it. That's going to be a problem for us. Yeah. And I mean, that's like the very basis of what they're using to find police officers. And if that doesn't show you that the problem starts at the very beginning.
Right. Pays well too.
I mean, you're not going to get a good, sane, smart person who wants to do that job for an extended period of time. You're just not.
I would also say if I had billions of dollars and you could fund, little newspapers across the country, the first question in any community, I think, to look at is the mayor afraid of the sheriff or the police commissioner? That's a good question, and one that I think, like, if we knew the answer to it, we'd look at this country a little bit differently.
I mean, there's literally sheriffs across this country right now cutting campaign ads for Republican congressional candidates.
Eliminate the office of sheriff immediately.
I mean, that seems right. There
should not be elected office for
right.
No, the LA Sheriff's Department is the worst. By the way, I just did an episode on the Intifada about it. They're like so much worse than the NYPD could even ever imagine being, which is terrifying in and of itself. But can I just put a little button on this story with a happy update? The woman who was abducted, her name's Nikki. She's okay. She's been released. And it just so happened that this abduction came at a time when she was really trying to raise funds to get herself a place to live. And partly as a result of this this increased attention, she fully funded the campaign. They raised over $15,000. And I think that she has a really great community supporting her. And I think she's going to keep on fighting the good fight.
Oh, well, as the police chief here would say, we gave her some temporary public housing, That's what we did. We helped her out,
Yeah.
NYPD helping out the people of New York.
NYPD supports unhoused trans women.
One final note just about sheriffs. Look at the symbolism of the National Sheriff's Association here. If anybody wants to tell us what this is, does anybody know?
Is that it's a hatchet, an axe, right?
It's a fasces, which is the fascist symbol.
Yeah.
Literally. Let's see.
Wow. Wow. I mean, I know that the LA Sheriff's Department has gangs within it that are explicit white power gangs.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back a while, but and so like I even before the Nazis, I could be wrong about that. I'd be interested if any listeners know. But yeah, if you look at just fasces, that's what that is. So they just there was early on, Trump gave a speech to them. And everyone's like, oh my God, he's literally standing in front of a fascist symbol. It's like, well, any president who gave a speech to that body would have done that.
Indeed.